Hey, welcome. This is Lee Waller. This video is the first in a series of tutorials that I'm going to take a look at the basics of After Effects and motion graphic design. In this video, we'll take a look at the user interface of After Effects, as well as some of the tools. We'll also explore what are keyframes, how to use them, and also the 5 basic transform properties. Now let's open up After Effects. I've been working in After Effects for a while, so I have a bunch of projects here that I've worked on in the past. We're going to start a new project right up here. And then we're also going to go ahead and start a new composition. So let's just click right here. This dialog box will always open. You can name the composition if you'd like to. For right now, I'm just going to leave it at Comp 1. We'll always need to know the resolution, the frame rate, and it's not always necessary, but the duration of the animation we want to create. For this one, I'm going to go with a resolution of 1920 by 1080. I'm going to use the frame rate of 24 frames per second. And then on the duration for this one, I'm going to leave it at 10 seconds. If yours isn't set to 10, just double click right in here. All of the numbers go blue and you can type in 1000, then just click over here to the side. Once we have all of this set, we can hit OK. And now we've created our first composition. After Effects works with workspaces, and right now I'm on the default workspace. You can see there a list of different workspaces that we can choose from, and then we also have this drop down right here with more workspaces in it. It'd be good if we're all at the default workspace. This area is our viewer, and we're going to see our work show up right here. Over here to the far left, you'll see right up here this tab, and it's the project panel. Here we're going to see all of our content that we want to use in the project show up. So when we import any videos or other graphics or even audio, that'll show up here. You can see that we have Comp 1 in here also. In After Effects, in a project, you can have multiple compositions. So as you add more, they will show up named the way that you named them, but with this icon next to them. Down here at the bottom is the timeline, and I kind of break this up into 2 sections. This will be the layers area where all of our layers will show up, and corresponding to any layer or object that we place in the viewer, a layer will show up, and along with that, it will have area here in the timeline for us to set keyframes and create our animations. Back up here at the top, you'll see a number of tools that we're going to be working with, just a few of them in this tutorial. And then over here to the far right, you'll see a number of panels. We can add panels to this, but for right now, we'll leave it with the ones that we have set. And any panel that you might be looking for, that if you can't find it, you can go right up here to Window. This drop down right here, here's all of the panels listed. You can see the ones that are present in our user interface right now. They have a check by them. If you want to add one, simply just click on it and it'll be added into the user interface. I'll go ahead and show you what we're going to build in this tutorial. This animation right here, I've created in After Effects in 2 different ways. The way we're going to build it is I've exported all of these pieces out as separate images. We're going to import those in first, then build this design and then create the animation. In a later tutorial, I'll show you how I actually created each piece. So back in After Effects, now we need to import those images. They're PNGs, graphic images. You can download these images, and that should be down in the description of this tutorial. Once you've downloaded those images, we'll need to import them into After Effects. There's about 4 different ways you can get to the import dialog box. First, you can go up here to File and go to File, Import right there. Or you can right-click right here in the project panel and go to Import File. Oftentimes, what I'll do in any blank space, and this is something I'll repeat often, blank space is very useful in each of these panels, but you can double-click in here, and that will open up the Import dialog box. And the other is the keyboard shortcut of Control-I. I'm going to go ahead and import the images that I need. I'm going to grab the dashes, the main circle, outer circle, quarter circle, small circle, and the text pad right there, as well as the triangle. I'm going to go ahead and import those. They've loaded into the project panel. We haven't worked with any of them yet, so they're not showing up in our viewer or in the timeline. We can click on them separately and you'll get a little bit of information here. You'll get a thumbnail of what they look like, their resolution, and then some other information down here. Before we dive into creating this entire design, I'm going to work with just one of these pieces here. I'm going to go to the dashes and I'm going to drag that down and drop it down here into the layers area. I'm going to use this to demonstrate the 5 basic transform properties and keyframes. Then we'll go back and build everything. To find the 5 basic transform properties, you'll go to the layer that you want to work with, and then we'll go right here to this chevron, this right pointing arrow, and click on it. You're going to find these all over the place in After Effects, and that lets you know that there are properties there. Now, it has opened up a category of properties, and again, there's another chevron. We'll just click on it, open it up, and there's our 5 basic transform properties. Anchor point has to do with where this image is located. The anchor point is designated by this crosshairs right here. You'll see one of these for every image, every piece of content that you place in the viewer. It's going to have this anchor point, this crosshair right here. So when After Effects looks at this image, it knows that its position is based on this anchor point. And that anchor point is, if we look at the resolution of this viewer, it's 1920 by 1080. So if you could count the pixels on this, it would be 1,920 pixels across and 1,080 pixels down. And so the position of this is 960 by 540. That position is right there. And that anchor point is marked on that also because the resolution of this image is also 1920 by 1080. That anchor point is going to change based on the size of your image. Now, this anchor point kind of works opposite of the way that you might think it would. That anchor point is going to stay right here if I adjust these numbers, but the image is actually going to move. And so I'll just adjust this. You can see the anchor point is staying, but the image is moving. You'll see how this will come in handy a little bit later. Let me go ahead and reset that. And of course, right here also on our X value, we have our X and our Y value. I'll reset that. And again, X value is going to be across and our Y value is going to be up and down. That's horizontal and vertical. Now the position will also move the object, but is actually going to move that anchor point with it. So you see there, the anchor point and the object move together. And that lets us know where that object is. It can be offset by the anchor point. And so we can do that either way. I'll reset all of this. Most of the time when I animate position, it's going to be on the position. I rarely touch the anchor point. Now, there's a couple of other things that you'll need to know about the anchor point and how they work with scale and rotation. Wherever that anchor point is, when we scale this down, you'll see it scales to that anchor point. And if we also rotate this, it's going to rotate around that anchor point, and we'll be using that in just a few minutes. I'll reset everything. And then opacity is just the visibility of the object or the image or the video clip, whatever you've placed in there. You can only go up to 100% on opacity and all the way down to 0 on opacity. So those are our 5 basic transform properties. And real quick, I'll use position to animate this to demonstrate keyframes. I'll go ahead and move in my timeline. And this is my timeline indicator. Wherever this is, that's the point in time in this timeline right here that we're seeing. Now, we've not animated anything, so nothing's moving. It doesn't look like anything's changing. And like we did earlier, when we set up our composition, we set it to 10 seconds. This timeline starts here at 0 and then comes up here to 10 seconds. And if you'll do the math, there's 24 frames per second. So there's 240 frames in this whole sequence here, in this entire timeline. And that's 240 positions of time that we can add in a keyframe. Now I'm going to start right here at the 1 second mark. You'll see that I have my 1 second mark right there. I can click on those numbers. And if I want to go to 2 seconds, I can type that in. I'll go back to 1 second. And so there's a couple of different ways of navigating this. Again, I can just go in this area right here, click and move that, or I can click and scrub it. So I'll set it back to 1 second, and I want to set my first keyframe on position right here. So that's the property, and I'm going to need to set this first keyframe by clicking this stopwatch. Any property in After Effects that you see has a stopwatch next to it lets you know that you can animate that property. So I've set the first keyframe. We're going to start this animation at 1 second in, and then I'm going to go ahead and move this over to this side. We can click on this number and type it in, and so I'll do 500. It moves it over. Or I can scrub these numbers by clicking on it and scrubbing left and right. Or we also have the ability to grab this image and move it around. So there's a number of ways of adjusting these objects. I'm going to reset that, and then I'll just drag it over to about right there, and we'll start that animation. Now, it has recorded this keyframe right here holds this information that at 1 second, that object's going to be right here. And up to that point, it's going to be there, okay? And now at this point, once we set our second keyframe, it will begin to move. So I'll jump to 3 seconds in, and then I'll just scrub this across over to the other side right there. And you'll notice now that After Effects has gone ahead. It says, all right, I see that you've changed time, and you've also changed the property or the value of that position property right there. And so it has added in that second keyframe for us. Now, we can jump back to the beginning of our timeline by scrubbing back there, or you can hit the home key. And then once we are back to the beginning, we can hit the space bar, and that will play the animation. And that's basically it. You see there that it takes 2 keyframes, one to start it and one to end it. And wherever it is in the timeline, it's going to hold that position. Now, if we set a keyframe here earlier, we could change the position of it. Or if we wanted to change the position afterwards, we can also do that. We'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit the space bar to stop that. And then I'll just jump to 4.5 seconds. And then I'm just going to grab this and I'll move it down here. And now you'll see it has changed time. We've changed the location. So After Effects has set the next keyframe for us. So I'll play through this real quick. And one more just to show, if we want to set this up somewhere else, I can set the timeline indicator right there, and then I can bring this up, and we can even scrub that off screen. So I'll do that right there. And now we'll play that animation. And so that's the basics of the 5 basic transform properties, as well as keyframes. Now, if I want to change the timing of this animation, let's say I want to speed it up, I can grab those keyframes right there. And by decreasing the amount of time, that's going to speed up the animation. And then I'll select these right here, and I'll bring them in a little bit closer. And then our last one right there, just drag it in. Now this animation is going to move a lot more quickly. And then if I want to spread that out to slow all of that down, I can. Just to show you, I'm going to jump right here. I can use the J and K keys on the keyboard to jump in between keyframes. So if there's a keyframe already set and I want to get to it to adjust it for any reason, I can use those keys to navigate through them. I can also use up at the top next to the backspace key is the plus and minus keys. I'm using the plus key right now, and it looks like the equal key, of course, but I'm using it to zoom into the keyframes here. You can see it says, remember that there's 24 keyframes for each second. And so 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that's where my timeline indicator is. And that's where that keyframe is, 23. And then at 24, we start the next second and it continues moving on up. But you can see that I can move these one keyframe at a time. So we have that ability to adjust the timing of our animation. I'll zoom back out by hitting the minus button up there at the top. So on any of these 5 basic transform properties, we can animate them also. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the dashes. I'm going to select that layer and then just hit the delete key. To start off the animation, I want to work with these 3 circles. So there's the main circle. I'm going to click on it, then hold down the control key to click on the outer circle, and then also the small circle right there. I'm going to grab those 3, and there's 3 ways I can bring this in. I can bring them in and just drop them in the viewer anywhere I want to. I'll undo that. I can also bring them into the viewer and have them snap to the center. That's very helpful. Let me undo that. And then also I can bring them down into the layers timeline here, drop them, and they will also drop in the viewer centered. For this first animation, I'm going to use 2 properties. That'll be scale and opacity. At the beginning, I showed you the keyboard shortcuts for the 5 basic transform properties. So I want to bring up only those 2 properties, and that will be S on the keyboard for scale. And then I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and hit the T key for opacity. If you've selected off of them, you can easily just drag and select them like that, and then use those keyboard shortcuts to open them up. I'm going to move my timeline indicator back to the beginning of the timeline. This is where I want this animation to start. I'm going to go ahead and you'll see that since we have all 3 layers selected, and we also have the properties there selected, we can click the stopwatch to set our first keyframe right here at the beginning of the timeline, and we only need to click one, and it's going to set a keyframe for all 6 of them right there. Very helpful. Then what we'll do is we want to scale these down and then also bring the opacity down to 0. So a couple of ways we can do that. You can click on any one of the scales right there and hit 0. That's going to bring all of them down to 0. Or we can scrub the number. So on this opacity here, it'll only go down to 0, so we can click and drag and bring the opacity down to 0 for all of them. So I'm going to just do 1 second on this. So we'll bring that on up to 1 second right there. And then reverse that process. I want the scale to be back at 100%. You can see that once I do that and hit the enter key, it's going to set those keyframes there. And then also for opacity, we'll bring that up to 100%. And there is our second keyframe for those. So we've created this first animation. I'm going to hit the home key, go back to the beginning and hit the space bar and watch that animation. I'm going to select those 3 again, and then I'm just going to close them up using the chevron right there. I'll go back now to the dashes. We can work with it. I'm going to grab it, bring it down. So on the dashes, I want to animate this in using rotation and opacity. And I'll start that animation right here around 1 second. So for those, I'm going to hit the R key on the keyboard to bring that up, and then I'll hold down Shift and add in opacity with Shift T. I'm going to take a moment now to explain rotation and why it has 2 different values to it. If I want to stay within 360 degrees of the full circle, I'll use this 0.0 degrees property right here. And you can see that I can click on it, scrub it around. And when we get back up to 359, let me try to ease in there. We're at 358, 359. And then when I go to 360, it's going to go back to 0, but that 0x at the beginning is going to go to 1. It's telling us that we've done 1 full rotation. All right, so if I want to animate within the 360 degrees, I'll use this second property. But if I want to do full rotations, say I want an object to rotate continuously for 10 full rotations, I'll use this number. We'll actually do that a little bit later in the animation. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to 0, And I'm right here at 1 second in, and I want to start this animation right there. So I'll hit rotation, click the stopwatch right there, and add in that keyframe. And I'm actually going to bring this back to a -90. So I'll just click right there and type in -90. And what that has done is it has moved this in a counterclockwise direction so that when I animate this in, I go back to 0, it'll be going in a clockwise rotation. So let me jump to 2 seconds in, and I'll set that back to 0 now. And we'll take a look at that animation real quick. And you can see it going in that clockwise rotation. Now we can set up our opacity here, go back to 1 second, and I'll bring that property down to 0, set my stopwatch right there. So we set that first keyframe, and I'll just do half a second on this animation so that we see it come in much more quickly and we're able to watch that rotation. So I'll bring that up to 100%, and we can watch this animation now. The next object I want to bring in is the quarter circle. So I'll grab it and I'm going to drag it down. Now this one, we do want it to drop on top of that center circle. So we want to make sure in our stacking order here that it is above that main circle right there. I'll go ahead and show you. I'll drop it between dashes and main circle. It's not going to have much of a visual effect on it. You'll see that it is sitting on top of our main circle right there. I can grab it again, and anytime you want to move these, grab the name of it, click on it, and I'll drag it below that main circle, and now it disappears. So you see that the stacking order of these layers right here does affect the way these objects show up. Now, if I hide this layer, and the way that I can hide this is by selecting it, clicking the eyeball right there, we've hidden that layer. It's no longer visible. You can see that that quarter circle is underneath it. We'll bring that back up, and then I'll bring that quarter circle back up above it. So now it's in the position that we want it to be. I'll do a similar animation to this quarter circle as we did to the dashes, but this time I'm going to start at the beginning, and I want this to continue to rotate throughout the 10 seconds of this animation. I want it to do 2 full rotations going clockwise. So again, we'll be using rotation. I'll hit the R key, and I'm going to animate it in by using opacity. So I'll hit the T key, Shift T key, and then on rotation right here, I'm going to click the stopwatch. We're at the beginning of the timeline with our timeline indicator. Hit the stopwatch right there. It sets our first keyframe, and then I'll jump to the end. And you can drag down there, or you can hit the end key if you have an extended keyboard and hit it, and it'll go to the end of the composition there. And I want it to do 2 full rotations. So all I need to do is go to this 0x and type in 2. And now I've told After Effects to animate this 2 full rotations throughout this duration of this composition. So we'll go back and take a look at that. And now we'll animate it in. So I want to animate it in just right here. So probably start at 1 second to begin to animate that in with opacity. And so click the stopwatch for opacity, bring that down to 0, and then we'll do half a second on that and bring that up to 100%. And we have one more like that we're going to work with, and that will be our triangle. So I'm going to go up here, grab the triangle, drag it down, and I'm just going to drop it on top of everything right here. And now here's where we're going to use anchor point, but we're not going to animate anchor point. You can, but for this project, we don't need to. We simply want to move the triangle into the correct position to rotate in this area right here. I'll go back over that. I'm going to bring up rotation, hit the R key right there, and I'm going to use the 0.0 degrees. And you can see that it's rotating around that anchor point right there. Let me set that back to 0. I'm going to hit Shift A to bring in the anchor point. So we'll use the anchor point property right here to move the image up to here, but the anchor point will stay right there. Then when we rotate, it will rotate it in this area right here. Down here on anchor point, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to click and start dragging to the right. I think that should be around 800 on that. This time what I'm going to do is set up this rotation to rotate 10 times counterclockwise during this whole timeline. I'll set keyframe for rotation right there. We'll start off at 0, and then I'll drag this to the end. And I'm going to, since I want it to go counterclockwise, I'm going to type in -10. If I typed in 10, it would send it clockwise. So now we'll go back and take a look at that. And now we can create our animation to dissolve that in. And I think we'll start right here. Yeah, about at 1 second. We'll need our opacity. So I'm going to hit Shift T to bring that in. I'll set my opacity right there, bring that down to 0, and then we'll do half a second on that also and bring that up to 100%. Go back and take a look at this, and our timing's looking good. So we're getting close to the end. I'm going to close this up. The next thing that we want to work with is the text pad. This is just a rounded rectangle. I'll bring it in and just drop it on top. Nothing real difficult about this. We just need to know the timing of where we want this to come in. So probably here again around 1 second. To animate it in, I'll just use scale. So I'm going to hit the S key right there, and I'll set our first keyframe by clicking the stopwatch, bring that down. You can go ahead and set that to 0. And then I'll do 2 seconds on this one, give it a little more time and bring that up to 100%. And we'll go back and take a look at the animation. And for our next 3 layers is going to be text. We're going to add 2 of them in with the text tool, but then the third one will be actually an effect. So I'm going to close this up here, and you'll notice that we don't have any of that in the assets we imported. We're actually going to create those using tools in After Effects. So for our text, we'll go right up here to the top, and you'll see our horizontal type tool, the T right there. We'll click on it, and then just come into the viewer anywhere that you would like and click. That sets up our text right there, and we can type in what we want to. So on this, I'm going to do capital T and then minus. And to commit to this, I'm going to go up here and grab my selection tool. Selection tool you're going to use quite often. Select it, and now we can move this wherever we want to. Since this bounding box is so small, be very careful with these edges right here. If you click on one of them, you can see that we can scale this and distort it. That's not exactly what we want to do for this. Let me undo that, Control Z. So I'm just going to try to click in here in some area and drag that over. I'll get it right here. This is kind of where I want it, but we're going to set this up to make sure it's where we really want it. And you'll notice here that the anchor point is dead center. It may not be dead center on yours. To fix that, over here in our properties panel for all of this, we have a paragraph. If you're not seeing that paragraph, go up here to Window and drop down to Paragraph and click on it. But you should have that available. Right now, our paragraph alignment for this text is centered. Yours might be left aligned. So if it's like that right there, you can come over here to Paragraph, center that up, and that'll help us on animating this in. Now, to make sure that this object is dead center of the composition, I'm going to go look for this other panel right here called Align. Again, if you don't have it, jump up here to Window and go to Align and select it. And we're going to align this object to the composition, and we can just click this horizontal align right there. And let me bring that off to the side a bit and show you. Click that right there, and now that is dead center of the composition. I'm going to bring this down. Since this object is the one that's selected, the text right there is selected, I can use my arrows to move this around. So I'm arrowing down right now. If you want to speed that up, you can hold the Shift key. So I'll just move that back up or back down. By holding the Shift key, it moves quite a bit more. You can also use the left and the right arrows. So I have it height-wise kind of where I want it. Let me line that back up, and it's in the center. So that's where I want that text right there. And so you see that that text layer is right there, corresponding to the T minus. I'm going to click in here to any of the empty space, and that deselects everything. I'm going to go back up to add in my next line of text, click the text tool, drop anywhere in here. As long as I'm not going back onto that text right there, I can click anywhere and I'll add in a new text layer. And for this, I want to use the word launch. And to commit to that, I'm going to go up here and grab the selection tool. And then I'll bring it back over and kind of position it somewhere in here. And then I can check my alignment right there. And that looks pretty good. If I want to move it up or down, again, we can use those arrow keys. When working with text, we've added these two text layers in, but if we want to adjust the font or the size of it or any number of different properties with working with text, make sure that that text is selected. And over here in our properties panel, you'll see that we have the text option. Here, you can do any number of things. You can change the font, you can change the style of it, the size of it. All of that is right here, and you can explore those. I'll take a look at text and characters in more detail in a later tutorial. You can even change the color of your text right there, add a stroke to it. There's a number of different things you have the opportunity to work with right in this area. This is in the properties. If you're not finding this, you can go back over here to Window and either go to Properties, or you can open up the character palette. Either one will work. Now, to animate these in, I'm just going to use scale on them. I'm going to select both of them so we can kind of move this quickly. Make sure that both of those are selected, and then I'll hit the S key to open up scale on both of them. Let's move in our timeline to see where we want those. Probably we'll bring them in with that. So again, I guess about right here at 1 second, and bring our scale down to 0. We'll just click on those and bring that down to 0. Make sure both of them are set to 0, and we'll set that keyframe for it. Then we'll go to 2 seconds in, and we can bring that back up to 100% on both of them. And so we've animated those two in. So those look like they're coming in a little bit slow, so I'm going to adjust the timing of those. I'm just going to grab these two keyframes here and set them to ½ a second. Speed that animation up a little bit. And then the last thing we want to do is add in our numbers up here for the countdown. I mentioned earlier that that is an effect, and what we're going to need to do is add in another object that we're then going to apply that effect to. So up here, we're going to need to go to Layer, and we'll go to New, and then we'll go to Solid. I'm going to go ahead and label this Numbers. I'm going to leave it at 1920 by 1080. I'm not going to worry about the color because the color is actually going to disappear when we add the effect to it. And we can just hit OK. That's been applied at the top of everything, so yes, it's covered everything up. We'll go ahead and apply the effect to it. So right here, we'll go to Effect, and we're going to drop down to Text, and we're going to add in numbers. Here you can choose your font. I'm going to drop down and go right here. You can use whichever font you want. And this only has a style of black, but I am going to change the alignment to center right there and then hit OK. You'll see now that once the effect is applied and it has popped into a new panel right here next to our project panel. Our project panel's still there. It's just we've opened up this panel now. There's our effect numbers, and here's the properties for that effect that we can work with to create the look we want on these numbers. Here under type, I'm going to change that down to time code 24 frames. I'm also going to drop down to our fill color right here, and I'm going to change that to white. Just click on the swatch right there, and it'll open up this fill color dialog box, and you can hit OK. And then I'm going to bring up the font size of it to fill that up just a little bit. We'll go back and play through this, and you'll see that the numbers are counting up. They're also kind of bouncing, so we're going to make one more adjustment on that. and go to proportional spacing, click on it, deselect it, and now our numbers won't bounce like that. So there's our animation. Now you'll notice if we are counting down to a launch, right now our numbers are going up and we need to reverse them. In the effect itself, the numbers effect, there's no way to reverse it. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to reverse the layer itself. This is easy to do. Just remember where this is. We're going to right click, we're going to go to time, and then time reverse layer. So now when we look at this, you can see we're starting off at almost 10 seconds right there, and we're counting down. Now we can go in and animate our time in. I'll jump here to, I think, yeah, about 1.5 seconds right there is a good place to start. Go to opacity, and I'm going to click that stopwatch right there. Bring that down to 0, and then go to 2 seconds in right there, and then we'll bring that up to 100%, and we should have our full animation now. Now, I will admit I kind of made a mistake. One of the things I should have done early on in this tutorial is saved the project. Thankfully, nothing has crashed. So I'm going to go here to File, Save, and I'm just going to use this folder right here, and I will label this Launch and save that project. Hopefully yours hasn't crashed, but yeah, that's something you need to kind of do at the beginning once you first set your project up, and then you can continually go through as you complete more work and hit the Control S, and that will continue to save your work. One last thing that I want to look at before we get out of this tutorial is our motion on a lot of these objects. Everything as it starts in, it's fine. The velocity of it is fine, but most everything is coming to a hard stop. Notice our three circles as they animate in. They have constant velocity throughout, even to the point of stopping, and they just do this hard stop. Now, what I want to do with that is I want to kind of give that a little more organic look, and we can do that. After Effects is set up to do that. So what I'm going to do is go down here, and I'm just going to click and drag and select those three circles, and then I'll hit the U key to bring up the properties for those. It doesn't really matter on opacity, but we can add this into them also. But it really matters on the scale. I want these, when they stop, to kind of ease into that stop. To do this, I'm going to select the second keyframe because that's our stop. That's our stopping point for this animation. I'm going to right click on any one of them, and right here at the bottom you'll see Keyframe Assistant, and it has three options: to easy ease in, and easy ease out. Using easy ease will apply what we need to, but to be more specific, I'm going to use the easy ease in. I want to ease into this stop. I'm going to select that, and you'll see now that it changes the look of our keyframe there, letting us know that we're going to ease into those stops. We'll go back and play this, and you can see that that looks just a little more organic. The other thing that I kind of want to do that on is the rotation of the dashes here. So I'll close these up, and I'll go to our dashes and hit the U key, and it's going to be on this rotation again. I can select that, and if you'll notice, there are keyboard shortcuts, and learning those keyboard shortcuts right there can be very helpful. So I can apply that by doing just Shift F9, and we've applied that ease in. We'll go back to it and take a look. And then if you want to use that ease in on any of the others, we could do that with the text and the text box there. So I'll go to those. I'll hit the text pad right there, and then control click the T minus and the launch right there. And then we can even do that on the numbers. And then I'll hit the U key to bring those up, and we can just select those, hit F9, and that will ease those in for us. I hope this has been helpful. For more on After Effects and other digital content creation, hit the like and subscribe button and check out my other tutorials.